Today is going to be the greatest lesson you will ever learn in life. The meaning of life. It's the most asked question across the planet by every top scholar in the world, biblical or not. Scientists, professors, philosophers. The meaning of life. The real meaning of life is the most asked question in the world and the most complicated answer in the world that most people will never understand. It's a fact. We're going to talk about facts here. We're going to talk about reality, okay? No matter what people talk about in the whole world, sophisticated knowledge, high IQ, AI world, okay? And whatever tools you choose to use does not matter. The meaning of life itself is the most asked question that everyone searches for throughout their life without even realizing it. Who am I? Why am I here? What is the real meaning of life? See, as you go through life, often you don't realize it, but when you have an intellectual conversation with people, in general conversations, we search for answers. We analyze, we get analyzed. We judge, we get judged. We think all the time. Today we think more than ever in global history. And we think too much, in general, with a high IQ. And our high IQ only makes us good at what we do, but in fact not intelligent. Recorded with evidence. So I want to make that clear to you. The more you think critically about things, the more you're living in your mind, trapped inside your mind. When you think critically, you always have voices talking to you, telling you do it, or don't do it. Often people listen to the wrong voice inside their mind. And it oppresses you and suppresses you without even realizing it. Thinking outside the mind is a whole different subject. Thinking instinctively, thinking with your intuition, thinking from the outside in instead of the inside out. Instead of analyzing, changing your perception. Change your whole perception. To think outside the mind, not inside the mind. It's one of the biggest secrets people don't understand, but you do that when you wander. When you're sitting down daydreaming or just wandering, you're thinking outside the mind, but you only do it 1 to 5%. The problem is you think with your mind 95 to 99%. Imagine if you could think outside the mind 95 to 99%, because that's your natural organic motor skills, to think outside the mind. And you're supposed to think outside the mind 95 to 99% of the time. You're only supposed to use your mind like a mathematical computer to work things out with, 1 to 5%. 1 to 5%. Your IQ is based on 98% memory, it's a memory box. It's only a mathematical computer to work things out with a high IQ. That makes you damn good at what you do, but in fact not intelligent. It's 5 senses and negative feels. They cause it conscious thoughts and subconscious thoughts, okay? But it's in fact fifth, right? 5 senses is negative feels, and your 6th sense is the most positive feels. To think instinctively, to think outside the mind, with loyalty, honor, respect, moral, remorse, inspiration, and encouragement. They're called the tools of righteousness. Now, the best moments you create, that you treasure the most, comes from an outside frequency, okay, through the dimension. It's called the atmosphere, an atmospheric feeling, coded in your DNA from your body cells. You can feel the outside influence in your reality in the positive feels or the negative feels. When you're in negativity, you start to stress with stress, fear, anxiety, confusion, frustration, delusion, and paranoia. And you think too much, and you do your head in and you do your head miles. That's when you think in your mind. When you think outside the mind, you find peace and harmony. You're in balance with yourself. Often people take drugs to numb themselves because they think with their mind too much and have the demon in the mind. So they take drugs to numb themselves so they can cope, right? And then they think outside the mind because drugs change your perception. It's a mind manipulation drug. Meth is the most powerful drug in the world to change your perception and think outside the mind. That's why it's used for ADHD medication, and that's why it's the most popular drug being used in the world. You don't have a cocaine effect, you don't have a heroin effect, you don't have a side effect like weed. You become alert, alive, awake and aware with your adrenaline on meth, right? So it has a whole different side effect. Now, I'm not recommending drugs at all. Do not get the wrong idea. I'm using it as a format to explain something to you. A child from 0 to 7 thinks like this organically, with this natural organic motor skills. He hasn't been program engineered. Between 3 and 7, he can mastermind a computer game and move 7 times faster than an adult can. He's pumped with adrenaline to be alert, lightweight and aware, in his primal state, and don't suffer any confusion and frustration or any mental institutionalization whatsoever. That begins when he goes to school. He becomes institutionalized to think with his mind and not with his natural organic motor skills. And they get stripped from him. So he goes to school to have that ability stripped from him, so he can think with his mind too much. And then becomes confused and he becomes isolated in so many different ways, and he always argues, debates and divides because he's programmed to become competitive and think too much with a high IQ. That only makes him good at what he does. And therefore, their little mastermind, the computer game, falls apart. Some people can master their mind, and by 24 they can move 7 times faster than anyone can think. Like Bruce Lee, who was a mastermind. Okay, you could also levitate a person with a short blow 9 feet into mid-air into a swimming pool, double his body weight. He could also fight off 7 black belt karate experts while he was blindfolded and feel every blow coming in such a way he could block every one of them. He could also play table tennis against one of the world's best table tennis players and beat him with a pair of nunchucks with that kind of precision. That's a mastermind. That's a person who thinks outside the mind with a whole different perception in life, from a whole different point of view than anyone else does. He's free from the voices in his mind, and he's totally free from his mind. And then he can master his mind and do many extraordinary things. That's a mastermind. It's also a person who knows what the meaning of life is. The most asked question by scholars all over the world that can't work it out. And that's why we're going to go into a very deep topic about this. The greatest lesson you will ever learn in life, the most important question in the Bible, the most important question in every human being's life. The fact is, majority of people never work this out. There's discussions from the top scholars in the world, and always has been. It's always been the most asked question in the world by every person in the world, no matter what they believe in. Who are you? Why are you really here? And what is the real meaning of life? You know, and we can get confused about this. When you look at the world, especially like you look at it today, especially right now in the time we're in, where we conquer and divide more than ever. Argue, debate and divide, and the biggest communication breakdown in human history, if you want to get down to the facts. We conquer and divide with our own family, lovers and friends. Right? We're becoming more and more disconnected every generation, right? There's no doubt about that. We're becoming more egotistical and more competitive and more isolated at the same time. We take more drugs than ever in global history to cope in life because we can't cope. Okay? We have more habits and addictions in the world than ever in global history because we're not coping very well. So when you really look at the circumstances in a whole different perception, you're going to come up with different answers, right? But you're stuck inside your mind and trapped with your mind. Okay? Now, that's been recorded all over the world that we're stuck, trapped inside our mind in the human conditioning. And the human condition means that we've never been able to work things out less than ever in global history. We're going backwards, not forwards. A lot of people think they're going fast forward into nowhere with high technology and sophisticated language and a high IQ. That only makes you good at what you do. It's going fast track into nowhere, but straight over the cliff, right? Straight into the abyss. Okay, into nowhere. Because the most sophisticated people in the world with the highest IQ are the ones that can never work out the meaning of life. They're the most back to front, inverted, and will never ever come to the right conclusion with their high technology and their high IQ. And that goes for the most sophisticated scientists and biologists in the whole world. It goes for the most sophisticated philosophers in the world. The smartest people write the most books about this. They're the ones who have the biggest discussions about this globally and always have. Okay? The search for the meaning of life has been the top scholar things, right? And the top research in every aspect of life. That's a fact. Okay? It's a real fact. In general conversations on a daily basis, we're searching for the meaning. We're searching for why we're here, who are we, and who's everybody else around us, and what's really going on. What's life really all about? Because that's probably one of the most confusing things in the world when you consider what the world's really like. I mean, how often do you hear people say, if God was real, would he let us suffer like this? Would he let us go through all this BS? Because, you know, that's pretty hard to understand, right? Why would someone like God let us go through all this BS? Why would he? You know, it doesn't make any sense, does it? Why would he let us suffer like this? What's the whole meaning here? Because that's something that anyone can relate to, you know, no matter who you are, where you come from, right? You can look at the world, you can see the evil involved, you can see the crap around you, you can see how people function and behave, right? And it's disturbing. There's no doubt it's disturbing. When you see how many opinions there are, how many people conquer, debate and divide, look at how people behave with the COVID and vaccinations. Look how tyrannical people become, and for some of us, we can't understand what would make people behave like this, right? I mean, we can sit here and talk about whether vaccination was right or wrong. That's not the point. The point is human behaviour. Take it flat earth theories, right? Okay, take a look at people with flat earth, okay? It's a great topic in the sense of take a look at how people behave about it, okay? Forget about whether the earth's flat or not. I'm not here to debate that. I'm here to make something clear to you. Take a look at the people, right, who says it's true when it's a theory and it cannot be proven by anyone else. There's no scientist or scholar that's ever been able to prove this. Called a flat earth theory for a reason. You see, in literal behavior on earth, it's on a flat plane, right? And in metaphor, when you think outside the mind, it's a sphere. So it has two different answers, right? There's one perception on the flat earth in literal behavior, in psychological behavior, in our vessel, right? Wherever we go, it's a flat domain, right? That's how it is in our 3D world. When you think outside the mind, dimensional thinking, if I look from the outside in, it's a sphere. And there's a lot of information about this. So when you put both eggs in the same basket, you have two different perceptions. And those are facts. And that's why Einstein, he believed the earth was flat throughout his life. Okay? And it was his judgment in the end that said it's always going to be a flat earth theory because there's overwhelming evidence to suggest otherwise. It's flat on our plane in the 3D world, and from the outside in, it's a sphere. Einstein was also an atheist his whole life. An atheist his whole life with psychological behavior and an extremely high IQ and very, very good at what he does. But in the end of his research, when he found there was overwhelming evidence to suggest otherwise, he started to get two different perceptions. When he started to open up his mind to think outside the mind with a different perception, he also turned around and said, I was listening to the wrong voice in my mind. And then he believed in God at exactly the same time. Steve Hawkins represents exactly the same thing towards the end, that he too realized that God does exist and he was listening to the wrong voice. That's represented in Solomon. These are people that finally discover what the meaning of life is. Okay? But it takes them a lifetime to get there. And when they get there and they mention the word God, none of the rest of the bureaucratic system wants to know that because they have no understanding. So it takes a special method to go through a special event where you're so highly intelligent and you've done so much research in your life that finally you hit the snag. And that snag, right, can come through in many different mythological events. Events we do not understand. Now, if you can understand this, okay, there's a story in the Bible about Nimrod, Gilgamesh, was searching for the meaning of life. Okay? Now, I'm not taking sides here. I'm making something clear to you because that's what you need to focus on. He went on a search for meaning of life. He went walkabout for years, right? He went across the mountains and across the deserts by himself to search for the meaning of life. Moses went walkabout for 40 years, and through that 40 years, he discovered the meaning of life. Elijah went walkabout for 40 years in the desert, and when he went walkabout through the desert for 40 years, he discovered the meaning of life. Jesus is the only person ever known to do it in 40 days and 40 nights. Okay? Moses also had a trip for 40 days and 40 nights, the same way. So that's why I'm going to compare this. But Jesus at 24 years old went through a special education for 17 years, and then he broke free from amnesia and first discovered his tools and who he really was. And he did that when he went across the mountains and in the desert. Okay? For 40 days and 40 nights. He faced the devil, right? The Bible tells you he faced Satan. Okay? And that's a concept and a perception that I want you to understand. So I'm going to explain this the best way it can be explained. Okay? I'm going to go into specific details about this because there's no man on earth anywhere that you will find that can actually explain the meaning of life. That can actually explain the meaning of life. And that's why I can absolutely guarantee you only the greatest philosopher in the world can explain that, because Plato's researching the human condition with a voice in the mind and what oppresses us from having these abilities, our superhuman abilities, right? To open up and break free from amnesia and discover how to use these tools and not be oppressed and suppressed by the mindset trapped inside our mind. Plato's the greatest philosopher of all time. The greatest thing about Plato was his teacher. His teacher was even greater than him, that learned from his mistakes and learned from his failures. And our greatest mastermind in the world is the one who can teach his pupil, right, to be better than him, from not going through the same mistakes and guiding him on the right path with the right tools as he's learned and discovered these things himself, and then he can apply it to his pupil and teach him how to get there much faster and be much greater than what he was. He's the greatest mastermind of all, the one that can teach him to be better. Okay? So Plato's known as the greatest philosopher of all time, and every philosopher ever since has been footnotes of Plato. Whenever these discussions comes up, like Jeremy Griffiths, the top bowlers in the whole world today, who wrote the book Freedom, the Cure, the Human Condition that's going to save humanity, he studied Plato and the human condition for 45 years. And in the biggest studies involved in this is the meaning of life. What is the whole meaning? Because the meaning of life is attached to everything about how to get out of that mind. How to stop using the mind and get out the mind and discover what the real meaning is. Because it's the answer to everything is in the knowing. And when you cross over and think outside the mind and you stick your head through the light at the end of the tunnel, you're not stuck in the tunnel anymore where you're analysing and being analysed through rabbit holes or chains wrapped around you that control you all the time and limits you so much. When you finally stick your head through the light at the end of the tunnel, or the head through the cave, as Plato describes it, and Jeremy Griffiths, who you'll find on World Transformation Movement, and you can listen to exactly what he says in 14 videos when he describes this. And when you stick your head through the light at the end of the tunnel, or head through the cave, you look back inside, and you realise the tunnel you come from, and it's only a perception you can understand in this very moment. There's no way explaining this. It's an event you must understand, you must feel, you must be in that moment organically, right? Naturally, with your natural organic motor skills. You cannot program or engineer yourself with any information or more documents or more information to ever learn anything like this. It has to go through an experience, right? A genuine, true life experience in order to know. You cannot possibly know with any IQ or any books or any sophisticated knowledge or any education in the whole world. There's nothing in the world that can teach you this. That's one thing every scholar in the world can tell you with the highest IQ in the whole world. It cannot be learnt like this. It never has been in our world. With any technology, any languages, any sophisticated IQ, any of the tools that we're programmed with, any engineering, any television, any movies, anything. You can only learn by going through a genuine true life experience, wisdom and knowledge yourself, and crossing over into that dimensional thinking, where you think outside the mind instinctively with your natural organic motor skills. And then you go through the light bulb idea, the light bulb The light is the holy light. The light bulb, the orb of light, is a light bulb idea, where you see the picture that tells you 1,000 words that cannot lie to you. Okay? When you have no access to this with your sixth sense and you cannot think outside the mind, you have no understanding of this whatsoever. You only think you do. And you can come to any conclusion you like, and you can listen to anyone you want. But you're not in the knowing. You don't have the experience, wisdom, or the knowledge to even discuss this subject. Right? Only a person who's crossed over and stuck his head through the light of the inner tunnel can explain that. A person with that genuine experience, wisdom, and knowledge. No other man can. It doesn't matter what conclusion he wants to come to. It doesn't matter how he wants to explain it. No man on earth is qualified to talk about this subject unless they've gone through it. And that's why the world's so confused about this with technology. Scientists, professors, scholars all over the world that thinks they're very intelligent and using all those tools trapped inside their mind. Well, while you're trapped in your mind to use those tools, you haven't got a clue what you're talking about. It's not possible. It's impossible. It's always been known by the top scholars in the world. It's absolutely 100% impossible. Plato couldn't work it out. No scholar in the world ever could. Only a person that goes through that experience, like Bruce Lee himself. And Bruce Lee had a greater mastermind, a much greater mastermind, that taught him to be the perfect pupil and understand how to use his tools by 24, just like Jesus Christ. Right? Just like Jesus Christ, no differently. He too went walkabout. He went walkabout across the mountains and isolated himself, right, for more than 18 months when he discovered that. What is it they're discovering when they go walkabout? What is this whole thing they're discovering? What is it really? What's happening here? You know, they often say you will come from the cave of prison with the truth to the masses. There's a reason for that. There's a massive reason for that. Because it's also a metaphor. Okay? It can be explained a lot of different ways. The cave of prison is also a place where you're completely pulled out of society. You're sitting in a black hole. More or less, right? Everything functions completely differently than the world outside. Okay? Totally different aspect of life. In prison, when you're in a prison with 50 men, you're in a concrete jungle where there's no system whatsoever. There's no governments, authorities, kings, or pharaohs. The elders lead mankind and everyone lives equal. You've got to learn to love thy enemy as much as your neighbor because you're living with them. And it has a whole different concept and a whole different structure and a whole different way of life that people have no concept of. I'm going to go into details about this for a reason. I want you to understand the meaning of life. I want you to have a clear-cut understanding of it, because with that understanding, you will learn yourself a lot better than anyone else in the world can. Okay? So that you understand how to get there, so you will discover the meaning of life and who you are and why you're really here. That's the most important question right now in the time that you're in. Who are you? Why are you here? And what's the meaning of life? Well, when you start to think outside the mind and you know how to do that, you go through what they call reborn. Okay? Reborn is going through the rabbit holes in the chain, right? And the chain's wrapped around you. It's going through the long, dark tunnel. 69 yin and yang. Okay? 69 yin and yang. The 6 is the dark tunnel that you're in, where you think and analyze too much with your mind. Trapped inside your mind. They call it the tree of knowledge of all things good and evil, where you've got two voices in your mind. The voices of good and evil that tells you to do it or don't do it all the time when you think critically. Okay? The tree of knowledge of all things good and evil is a tree of knowledge with your IQ when you think too much in the 5 senses and negative fears. They call it blue pill in the matrix. Okay? If you don't want to change the way of thinking, you don't want to learn anything, stay on the blue pill. Keep thinking with your high IQ and think you know everything and keep going the same path, right? And live in your own truth, manifest your own truth, live in your own bubble. Don't deal with nothing. Just believe in the voice in the mind and believe that that's your God. And you're very limited with 5 senses and negative fears because it's negativity. And most people are living so much negativity today because they're so trapped in their mind. To think outside the mind with an outside influence, the light bulb idea, the picture that tells you 1,000 words, right, is in the most positive fears to think with your 6th sense. Your 6th sense is to think outside the mind with your intuition. 40,000 cells in your heart controls your biological system. with a gut feeling survival mode, the very preservation mode for life that activates molecules. And that's called your chakra. With the shiver in your spine, that's called Jacob's ladder. That's a neural link in the tree of life inside you that's alert, that fires up your body cells, right, with your Christ oil accretion, which is adrenochrome, right, with graphene oxide serum, and a conduction with an oxidization. And that oxidization makes your body cells go on fire, your aura on the outside, okay, because your spirit's on the outside, it's not inside. That's your mind, trapped inside your mind. That's psychological and mental, and your high IQ you get programmed with. That's inside your vessel, that's inside your mind. That's your psychological part that's very limited. But outside is your aura. Outside is your spirit. That's why you think from the outside in, not the inside out. You're limited. You don't have faith in your own aura. You can't use it because you think too much, and it limits it. Only to use 1 to 5%. You use it when you make love. You use it when you go in fight-flight mode. Like when a bear attacks you in the woods, you stop thinking and you run 7 times faster. Okay, you respond 7 times faster without thinking to save your life, because it's a life preservation mode for life, isn't it? Your gut feeling is survival mode, the preservation mode for life, right? So you don't think about it, you run to save your life. And the same thing happens when you make love, right? You think outside your mind. Or when you float away and wonder when you're daydreaming, okay? That's when you float outside your mind. Okay, dream time is very important to you. Dream time is what the Aboriginals use all the time when they go walkabout. And what do they always do? They go walkabout in the mountains for 40 days and 40 nights, non-stop. They know more about walkabout than anyone else in the world does. They're more connected to God and the outside influence than any person in the world does. And they understand that through their natural environment. They live by the vineyard rule equally. Susima commandments, and only ever have elders. Never had kings and pharaohs or chiefs like Indians and every other entity has. We call it tribal, the human condition, right? They say our natural primal state, right, was tribal, right? Hunter and gather, right? They declared that our human instincts is deemed to be dangerous as an old ancestry savage tool. That's what they say in the whole system, and you must come to a conclusion with reasoning in your mind. You must think with your mind. You must be mental and think with a high IQ and come to a conclusion with reasoning. That's why people believe in their own truth. That's why people become so selfish in the world. That's why people become so competitive in the world and completely shift from their primal state to use the natural organic modes, because your moral instincts is your natural organic modes, because to think outside your mind. And they deem that to be dangerous, so you think too much today. And come to your own conclusion with reason. You know what that means to? It leads to people living their own truth and the biggest confusion in the whole world. And the massive conquer and division that's happening more and more every day. People are not connected anymore because they come to their own conclusion, believing their own truth all over the world. Everyone's so selfish today, and they're so controlled with sensitivity and highly emotional feelings that fear, stress and anxiety, confusion, frustration, delusion and paranoia controls them completely and become completely two-faced all over the world. Everyone's two-faced in 2 different minds. It's good to understand that, so you know what you're dealing with, right? So you can understand yourself biologically and what's happening inside your vessel and inside your mind, trapped in your mind all the time. Think outside the mind, you can do extraordinary things. And it's a God-given gift, like a child had from 0 to 7 who wasn't confused about it. And that's why you understand these things, right? A child did not suffer. He was a mastermind in the computer game. He didn't suffer enemy disorders and DNA defects because he wasn't programmed with voices in the mind yet. That's why when a stranger comes to the door when he's 4 years old, he runs to the corner with a bad person, and a parent gets manipulated in 10 seconds flat because he comes to his conclusion with reasoning with a high IQ and thinks he's very intelligent, and then the voice tells him to have faith in him. So the voice can convince him into that, and he gets manipulated in 10 seconds flat because he's highly intelligent. He knows what he's doing with a high IQ in negative feels, and he can't feel the positive feels with his 6th sense, but a child can. A child knows it, right? And a child can feel it in a heartbeat with adrenaline. So when a good person comes to the door, a dog and a child run straight towards that person in a heartbeat with adrenaline. And he isn't wrong. He's right smack bang on the money. But a parent turns and say, oh, the dog's taking too, I don't know why, and start freaking out. I wonder why. You see, you're not Bruce Lee who can mastermind his mind by 24 and move 7 times faster than you can think. Instead, you become inverted and you don't know why, or you get manipulated. And then you argue with yourself throughout your life with the human conditioning because you're mentally institutionalized now. You were mentally institutionalized so the mastermind, the computer game fell apart. You also created the accretion to conduct with your chakra, your gut feeling survival mode, the shiver in your spine, right, the neuralink, the tree of life for your spinal cord, to fire up with the adrenaline and adrenochrome, to be alert, alive, wake and aware in your terrible 2s, all the way to your 7. Then you go to school and become brainless, stupid and dormant with a high IQ, so you can be dumb like your parents, by 24. So you have voices in your mind. And what do they tell you when you go to school? Oh, you got anyone guiding you on that computer going to be perfect? Son, you must be talking to yourself. Or you have psychosis if you're talking to someone else. That's what a psychiatrist tells you. Well, you convey feelings to thoughts from an outside influence on your reality and explain in your own biological language. So whether you're talking to yourself or someone else, it's an outside influence from a lower dimension, right? Another parallel world. When you convey feelings to thoughts, you explain in your own biological language and you think you're talking to yourself, but you're not. It's proven on documents. Those voices are ultimately designed from extinction because they keep you trapped inside your mind with a lower frequency and a lower IQ where you can only use 7 to 9% of your mind. Einstein could only use 11 at any given time. But someone who can master their mind are not limited and suppressed and can think outside the mind and use 100% of their mind. They have faith in their own biological genes to use the natural organic molecules to think outside the mind, and it's called spiritual thinking in the biblical world, right? It's called a different perception in the sophisticated world. It's called subconscious and conscious thoughts, okay? And your body self-repairs when you're asleep, and they work together, but when you're awake, they go in corruption, coercion, collusion, because you're in the mindset that you're in. That's why you can repair your genes to your immune system the same as a child can from 0 to 7, because he creates one accretion. By thinking outside the mind, he doesn't suffer any confusion, frustration, delusion, paranoia. He's not been mentally institutionalized through education, so he doesn't suffer the human condition whatsoever. So the cure of the human conditioning has been found for the first time in human history, okay, hailed by every top scholar in the world, written in the book Freedom. The cure of the human condition that's going to save humanity is to be free from the voice in the mind and trapped inside your mind, which means it's subconscious and conscious thoughts. They're teaching you right now in the World Transformation Movement how to think outside the mind with your natural organic molecules to use the great ability that God gave you, believe it or not. That's what's being educated by Jeremy Griffiths and explained biologically. But remember what I'm telling you, it's being explained biologically, so you understand it psychologically. Dr. Bruce Lipton, cellular study research, who says you perceive perfection in time more powerful than your reality. He explains it as a scientist in cellular study research. Joe Dispenza says you can stop aging process. Now, a lot of people are saying this is new age. These guys are trying to teach the whole world from every aspect of life and every belief system, biblical and religious or not, to try and save the whole world, right? Understand something specifically. God loves every person in the world. He's not biased, he's not religious, and he's not political, okay? Try and understand that. Because the greatest philosopher of all time, the greatest biologist in the whole world, could never work out the cure of the human condition without knowing what the meaning of life is. That's the key subject. That's the key to every single thing in the world. Knowing the meaning of life leads to the cure of the human conditioning and the cure of having voice in your mind and being trapped in your mind and no longer being trapped in your mind because you have amnesia and you do not know any better. You do not know what you do. Jesus explains that on the cross, all right? He explains that when he's getting bashed and whipped to the living shithouse. He explains very specifically and very clearly, right, that when he's getting bashed and people throwing stones at him, this is what Jesus says. He says, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. They do not know any better. They do not know what they do. So that's why this is a very important topic, right? More important than you really do understand. And I just want you to know that, okay? I just want you to understand this so that you do understand the truth. And if you understand the truth can set you free. But if you don't understand the truth, it will never set you free. So we're going to go into some explanations because I want to give you some details that will help you understand things. So please bear with me because you need this information whether you like it or not. Okay? And if you don't want to know about this, you'll never know the meaning of life because no one else can explain it to you. And they're just facts. They're just reality. So I'm going to give you a very important lesson. Now, I'm going to be straight up with you, right? I'm going to have to go through some details with you to make you understand a few critical things for a good reason. So we all go through life and we all have a different walk of life, okay? We all go do our different research and discover things differently. Now, I'm a particular type of person that you won't find anywhere else on earth. And I'm not saying that to brag or put tickets to myself in any way, shape or form. That's your mindset if you're thinking that way. It's not me just trying to deliver something. It's your mindset. Most people are in the mindset to be judgmental and to belittle people, right? Because that's what the voice in the mind does. It limits them so much that they can't learn things. I want you to understand the voice in the mind are ultimately designed from an extinct declared on documents. You're warned about that in Revelation for a reason, right? The voices in the skull, like Einstein said, I was listening to the wrong voice. Like Solomon said, I was listening to the wrong voice. Like Steve Hawkins said, I was listening to the wrong voice. Every person in the world, like Jesus at 24 years old he discovered himself when he broke free from amnesia because he realized, like you and me, he was a little boy who didn't know who he was, why he was here, and the meaning of life was. Like all of us, we don't know who we are, why we're here, or what the meaning of life is. He was no different than you and I. But he went for a special teaching to master his mind. And 24, he breaks free from amnesia. Amnesia. And then he discovers who he is when he breaks free from amnesia. And a person is reborn. Today, people are born again as they go through the rabbit holes in the tunnel and discover something new like we all do in life. We all go through rabbit holes throughout our life and discover something new with great experience, wisdom and knowledge. We always discover we're wrong. But the older we get, we always discover how wrong we are. Constantly wrong with the IQ, always wrong. And only a great old man of renowned wisdom and knowledge knows that, better than anyone else. But Millennium Age has totally abolished the greatest wisdom and knowledge in the world and manufactured their own truth and live in their own bubble in some sort of comfort zone and disrespect the other's wisdom and knowledge the most. Twisted the fabric of truth so much to normalize what was immoral yesterday, they're totally oblivious to what normal is. They just want their normal back and the only normal they know. Because they're spoiled, rotten little brats and cotton wool babies that stuck to a screen their whole life and got no idea what life's all about whatsoever. Not even remotely close today. Today, I can tell you something. When we talk about reborn, we talk about rebirth. Now, you can go and talk to people all over the world. I can guarantee you this, 45 years ago, you come across many people reborn or rebirth. Today, you won't find any. That shows you the whole world's stuck in the reincarnation trap. The whole world's stuck in amnesia with their high IQ because there's no one reborn in the earth except for people that has a near-death or death experience. They're the only people in the world today you will find that's been reborn and rebirthed to think outside the mind, and they have to get away from everybody else, including the churches. It's a known fact. The top scholars in the world has just reported this, that 98% of all Christianity and all belief systems religiously are all completely lost and polarized in a hypnotized state. They can't even deal with revelation and the truth anymore. They leave the churches, they don't even want to talk about those subjects. No scholar can talk practically in the whole world about revelation whatsoever and the true meaning of all these subjects. Can't even touch base on it because people leave the church. So 98% of all belief systems in the whole world are failing dramatically, reported by the top scholars right now on prophecy watches with the top religious scholars in the world and the top Christians in the world. The top scholars have reported this. And they're talking about the fact that no one's reborn anymore. Only people have death experience. So that'd be a good idea to understand that people may be born again, but that's just going through rabbit holes and you're still in the dark tunnel of the tree of knowledge of all things good and evil, where you're still trying to work it out. Those that think instinctively and think outside the mind will tune out the program. That's recorded in the Matrix documentary, right? Keanu Reeves represents an outside influence in reality like a mastermind, right? So we have what's called an RSVP list. It's called Research, Succeed, Victim, Perfection. They're called outlaws. Right? They're outlaws, right, in the criminal elements, right, on the CIA and NSA documents. They've studied outlaws and they have the biggest masterminds in the world. They're on an RSVP list, which stands for Research, Succeed, Victim, Perfection. That's what Bruce Lee declared as. Masterminds have never had any declaration or any diplomacy in human history. They've never had a piece of paperwork because it will throw the whole balance of the system out right, with educated knowledge and a high IQ, it'll throw everything out of whack. They've never had a diplomacy or any paperwork, right, on any mastermind in the world for that reason. Because a mastermind's 10 times more intelligent than anyone else in the world is, with the highest IQ in the world. They know that. They're absolutely 100% aware of that. It would just crash the whole system, because that would mean that people would know their program and engineer with the wrong tools, and they're kept inside a reincarnation trap. They're kept inside, right, have amnesia and never know who they are, why they're here, what their meaning of life is. So there's some people in the top ring here that knows these tools. And I'm going to make an example. Bill Gates, at 24 years old, became the richest man in the world on world stage media. And a reporter said to him, Bill Gates, how do you think of this? I want you to consider something, okay? I'm not on Bill Gates' side. So I want you to stop thinking the way you do. He sits at the UN like he owns his own country. The 10 officers we're warned about, the 10 kings in the Bible, is the 10 officers of Geneva Convention. You know, even Christ tells us a certain subject about a certain person and where he dwells and comes from, because that's where Satan dwells. And that's Geneva, where they built the CERN machine at Apollos, the God of creation and destruction. Will she be at the front, God of creation and destruction? And Klaus Schwab and and Harari, the architect, both say the same thing. We have the divine power, creation and destruction. We're going to create our own God. And, you know, they're right there in Switzerland at Geneva, where Satan dwells. And then we have the 10 officers with the 10 kings, and the top office is Garvey. And he sits at the UN's most powerful country without any diplomacy or paperwork. But he's an absolute mastermind without any paperwork. There's no doubt about that. The most powerful man in the world, right, that owns Google and everything to do with MR technology. An electronic magnetic device that comes from methamphetamine from magic plays in the days of Nimrod. Most people are oblivious to this. His favorite book, the Book of Statistics, that he holds up in front of the world, is how to manipulate the population with these products. It's also in Law and Order documents with a chaos document this thick, that's the same book revised. It's also every bit of trade they use for hybrids. Because graphene oxide, if you Google this, gold creates hybrids, and Nimrod was using this, and graphene oxide, iodine, on the public for electronic magnetic device with voices in the mind on reverse psychology. So voices came to the mind, which was an alien invasion from an outside influence that tells them what to do all the time. It's a known fact. That's why this product, graphene oxide, has been in a drug delivery system right since 1895, methamphetamine, ADHD medication, all mental disorder tablets. Google drug delivery system graphene oxide. Please. You see graphene oxide is also used in preservatives in all your food. Please look. You see it's also a drug delivery system for health products. Please look. You see it's in vitamin C, D, B12, zinc, iron, magnesium as well. So you've been consuming it for 120 years to conduct with on reverse psychology and stripping your six senses at the same time. So the voice in your mind, right, is an artificial intelligence, an artificial invasion, and an alien invasion where you talk to yourself. It's called possessed by the devil. That's why it's declared in the documents, the voice of the mind, ultimate design and extinction. It's a tree of knowledge of all things good and evil. You're stuck on the 6, and you've got to think with the 9 to think outside the mind, in the light. So what's life and the meaning of life all about? Well, it's to understand resurrection. And to understand resurrection is to take your head through the light at the end of the tunnel. And only then will you know that you've gone through a death experience, and that everything about death, everything about stress, everything about society, confusion, frustration, illusion, and paranoia, every single thing about it is all in the mind. Trapped inside the mind. And it oppresses you. To think outside the mind, you can master the mind, and you don't suffer from any of these things. And you're completely imbalanced and the most humble human being any person could ever be. But to communicate with the rest of the world, you must be very confrontational to get through the thick skull. And that's something that most masterminds in the world cannot do. They stay on the mountains, like the Shula masterminds, monks and the Buddhas, the indigenous people, they stay off the grid. People in the underground world that master their mind, they stay away from people because they have to. They have to disconnect from every other person in the world. But every person that they know, right, looks up to them dramatically and always use them for advice on everything. They always become the great leader and the godfathers in the world. They always become the greatest leaders and the real godfathers in the world that everybody looks up to with those tools. It's a known fact. But most people become jealous, spiteful, weak cowards and throw stones at those people and oppress themselves so much and oppress everyone else a bit, and they become the oppressor. And the oppressor's always doing the suppression to oppress people, to control people. And that's most people with their egotism. See, atheism is created, right, through an evolution theory, and reverse psychology come to your own conclusion. That's an atheism tool that makes you very egotistical and very mentalist, right? Very mentalism. Atheism is egotism, it's mentalism, it's socialism, okay? It's fascism, it's communism, it's all the same thing. It's coming to your own conclusion with reasoning. It's living your own truth. That's what it all is. The whole lot's all the same thing in the six. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you understand why you can't handle the truth, can't face it, can't deal with it, or you live in your own truth in some sort of comfort zone with the same tools, trapped inside your mind and very limited, controlled by stress, fear and anxiety, sensitive and highly emotional feeling, and conditioned into the human conditioning into post-human stage. You're in post-human stage where no one's reborn and can't cope. Everyone takes drugs to numb themselves because they can't cope. 93% of people die every day out of every 3,000 people because they die from stress-related diseases. So people don't understand that people use the words to belittle people more than anything, or live in their own truth. It's just a polite way of saying, I don't believe in you, and conquer and divide with. Right? And that's what everyone's adapted into today. This new modern technology and this whole new selfish, egotistical way of thinking, where people disconnect with their family, lovers and friends and can't even keep them together anymore. But they're all going to save the world like they're great gods with their high IQ and sophisticated knowledge and language with this whole new concept. A whole new perception in life that they created through modern technology and modern gadgets, right? With images and movies and creating Hollywood characters and Hollywood spinners. And everyone's a great character with a personality, but have no moral instincts to think instinctively and think outside the mindset they live in. That's what's happened to the whole world. Record on documents, right? In post-human stage. So the resurrection you manage to understand your biological genes and using your natural genetic manuscripts to think outside the mind, to be reborn, to be rebirthed, to cross over from the 6 to the 9, and not to be confused about these things. To understand what the meaning of life is the key to every single thing in the world. Every single thing in the world. You don't know nothing about life until you know that meaning. And you'll never know that meaning until you cross over and stick your head through the light of the inner tunnel. And then you go through what's called the rebirth, reborn. Then your vessel dies. And I'm not kidding you. Because you think you are your vessel and you analyze and get analyzed with a high IQ and more critical thinking and more information to fact check, Google yourself like a robot, but you will never learn. You'll never learn with these tools. You have to go through certain experiences, right? And if you really want to dedicate yourself to go through that, you can dedicate yourself to mastering your mind, and it takes 7 years. So your mind's not mastering you. So you become the mastermind of your own mind and your vessel. So you think outside the mind spiritually, and you spiritually control your vessel and control your mind and control the voice in your mind, because that's only that much of who you are. It's only that much of who you are. It's only a little tiny bit of who you really are. 7% of who you really are, right? Everything you think about with a high IQ and the sophisticated knowledge is 7 to 9% of who you really are, right? Your 100% is outside here, right? Your perceived effect's 10 times more powerful than your reality. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Your face system is 10 times more powerful than your reality. When you think from the outside in, you control your vessel, you control your mind, you control the voice in your mind, and you only use that as a mathematical view to work things out with 1 to 5%. You've got complete control, and you don't suffer the human conditioning ever again in your life. You never suffer confusion, frustration, delusion, and paranoia ever again in your life. You reset your biological clock in your central nervous system, right? You alter your whole DNA with the accretion. You conduct your body cells with the outside influence of reality in the most positive fields, with the gut feeling survival mode, the chakra. It's on fire with the shiver in your spine, Jacob's ladder, the Neuralink. And you can feel things from an outside influence, dimensional thinking, such as codependent feelings. I rang my wife one day 3,500 kilometers away and said, hey, I've got a gut feeling what's going on. She says, oh, I was sick this morning, threw up in the bathroom. I thought so, I could feel it. The police was trying to come and get me, and I was gone by the time they come there. On surveillance in all the records and documents, they learned after 14 raids, and they could never ever get me. No matter what they did, they realized that I could feel them coming through the atmosphere when they were starting to do the documents, and they had me in their mind. Record on documents that I was a mastermind who could respond 7 times faster than any sophisticated system they could use on their documents. So I could feel through the outside influence. I had a universal language. I knew what was going on in their mind as soon as they were thinking about me. I could feel it. I could feel it with my instincts. They were coming. Is it John? Is it Paul? No, it's the fucking police. They're coming, right? I better clean up and get out of here. That's a natural organic motor skills that you have when you can master your mind, you know what the meaning of life is, with a universal language. Then you can feel things, right? Because you don't have to think about them. Your mind oppresses you from having that ability by thinking you're clever all the time and thinking you're the best with a high IQ and you know better than everyone. Those people will never understand the meaning of life for that reason. Because they cannot think outside the mind and no one can work it out. No one in the world can explain it neither. Now, I've gone through a lot of things in my life. I suffered. I was rejected. My father said I was worthless and a piece of shit, never man up to anything. Okay, I was stranded butts up at 2 years old on flatline. Okay, at 12 years old, I left school because I got my head punched in every day from red hair and freckles. Then I went to the ground, to the underground. I went on the streets and became a street wisdom knowledge. I learned everything from street wisdom, right? Where I took drugs to numb myself to cope in life. Where my mates took heroin and watched half of them die, 3 died in my arms. Okay, so I went through hell. Okay, I went through hell. Right? I had the devil in my mind. I had psychosis. I had stress and anxiety, and I had bipolar declared, right? To be in a bad shape, right? I took drugs and became a bad junkie. I OD'd at 18 years old. Flatline, the second time. Watched my mates die in heroin, 3 died in my arms. Okay? I went through life and went through suffering. Okay? And you know what? It teaches you things. It teaches you a lot of things, right? I'm not ashamed of anything. My father brought me up to be worthless. I had the best relationship with him before he died. Okay? Because I learned things, right? And nothing. I don't regret a single thing that happened to me. With all the suffering I went through, I absolutely appreciate it more than you can imagine. It taught me different tricks. It taught me a lot of things about life. But there's nothing in the world that taught me more than what I'm about to tell you. I'm flying high. Okay? I'm a drug lord in charge of the 7 most powerful networks, the most wanted criminal in Australian history. The biggest mastermind, the complicated things. But we brought down the highest death time of cocaine, the highest gang killing and gang violence and domestic violence in the streets. Right? Where children get taken off their parents and go into homes to get raped and bashed and go into prison. The Royal Commission paid out 80% of people in prison for being bashed and raped in homes. Right? And over 90% of prostitutes were paid out at the same time because they were bashed and raped through homes. So when you stop this adverse effect and bring it to the lowest it was in 30 years, in 4 years, you show what you can do. So single-handedly, right, I dropped the statistic from the highest statistic in 1996 to the lowest by 2000 it was in 30 years. Okay? So I know I left my mark on earth like this. And I know how to resolve problems and gain more faith, and people had more faith in me and trusted me above any person I've ever met in my life. My arresting officer envied me. He wrote in his affidavit, he commended me. He retired when he realized that the work was plummeting on the board every day. And they were watching me putting all the top networks together and stop the biggest violence, gang killing, right, drug deaths, and also domestic violence like this. When the police is watching these things plummet to the ground and they realize their bosses wants to take me down because I'm hurting their work and hurting their strategy, how do you think some people feel about that? How do you think some people feel about that? You see, I didn't even know that. We were just saving our mates because of the shit we went through. We just got together and decided to save our mates and create an organic drug, right? A meth without any human side effect. The safest drug in the world at the time. On every testing centre across Australia, my products found. On every document if you read about them. I designed glass that no scientist professor in the world had ever designed. That put me to the scene of the crime, my fingerprint. Glass that took a process from 40.5 hours down to 3.5. They had never seen anything like it before in their life. And I wasn't educated. Now I can go on about this and having a mind that you don't have, record as a mastermind. One of the biggest masterminds, the most sophisticated mastermind they've ever dealt with. But I stood against the system that they were setting up, right, with their marketing strategy where they charge you 4 times more taxpayers' money, right, to put people in prison, right? And that's their whole revenue. I know what their revenue is, and we stopped their revenue, and we stopped their work, right? We proved it, right? Like no other human being on earth, we proved it. So I became the most wanted, set up in corruption to put him in jail, and my own arresting officer says that at the same second mention. That is corruption. They don't have the evidence. In 2004, they charged me for money laundering for $70 million, and it's declared that I gave it all away, 90% of my money. Declared with solid evidence that I gave it away to people suffering, and the case was corrupted. Corruption, coercion, collusion, that's all they got. It's all they can use. So I go to prison in the biggest mental health research ever conducted in global history. And this is where I'm going to give you a big Hollywood spin. A real one. So I'm doing fantastic. I've got lots and lots of friends. People love me, right? Because I create that atmosphere. I'm walking around by myself. No gangs, right? Because it wasn't like that. They painted as bad as they can on paperwork, but the reality is, go and read the brief. They couldn't work out I was walking around by myself, and every enemy in the world, I was putting them together. I was connected to everyone that well because no one knew how to hate me. People that knows me couldn't hate me if they tried. Not with the tools I use. I always did the right thing with honesty is the best policy and cared about our friends and what was happening in the world and did something about it. And everyone could see eye to eye in that with basic common sense. And our moral values in the right place. It doesn't take much. You don't have to be sophisticated with high IQ and using some sort of marketing strategy. I create a reputation by word of mouth, by using those tools like a father or like a brother or like your best mate, right? Not complicated, okay? That's how we work on the streets. But I'll tell you something, you know, the world still got to me. I was still spoiled rotten, had big drag cars, had a beautiful home, right? You want to see my home? Go and have a look at 6 to 10 Haylett Avenue, Camira, Queensland, Camira, C-A-M-I-R-A. Go and look at the property, right? It's sitting there for sale, right? Go and have a look at that property. That's my place. Go back and have a look at the documents. You see that was in my name. That's what I lived in, right? Okay, I had $250,000 drag cars. I had national records on the dragster with the fastest street car in Australia, okay? And I had fast cars doing 350 kilometres an hour across the desert, right? Across the Northern Territory in open speed limits, right? I mean, I was pumped with adrenaline. I had a life. I had a real life, right? I was pumped, right? I faced the most evil scumbags in the world. I've dealt with the most corrupt people in the world. I've dealt with people in every single level. I used to buy and sell the XY, the top selling car in the country, the most collectible item. Okay, cars have a passion. And I knew everybody from cops, politicians, and the underground world that wanted to make a name for themselves and had a status and had a passion for this car. So I come to know some of the biggest cops and politicians in the whole country and some of the biggest judges, and had some of the greatest, most intellectual conversations you'll never have. Because you're not like me. You're not even remotely close. You couldn't even compare yourself with me, but most of you do. You want to be competitive? What do you got to compete with? You got nothing to compete with me. No man on earth can compete with me, but everybody does. Especially social media platform. Hollywood babies, homotech babies, programmed with Hollywood spinners. They think they know everything about life today. What, are they kidding me? What is wrong with the world? Honestly, how does everyone come up with this perception that everyone thinks they know better than everyone on the social media platform and been sitting on the screens all life, hasn't walked anything like I have, has never lived a life like I have, not even remotely close. Everyone thinks I'm crazy when in fact they are. Everyone thinks I'm full of shit because they are. Everyone accuses me exactly what they're guilty of, and I've never used those tools in my life. I've never been like this. Never used such horrible, disgusting, filthy tools that nearly every American uses on social media platform and programs everybody else with their egotism. Far left, far right, I'm better than everyone. Debate, conquer, divide. What is wrong with the world? I mean, you can see everyone's in a massive syndrome, suffering the human condition with a voice in the mind that makes them so egotistical in this world. And they can't even see how they've been molded into this. No wonder no one's reborn. No wonder everyone's full of bullshit. Lies everywhere. Hollywood spinners with this personality that tells them to do that. They can't even think outside the mind because they're using their IQ and they're using their sophisticated knowledge all the time. They're not reborn. They don't even know how God works. They don't even know how the outside influence works at all. They can't explain none of these things. It's said they deceive people all over the world, so does every person in the world. Everyone's a false prophet and a false liar and don't even understand what the truth is. So no one can break anyone free. They just lie to entertain themselves and create a name for themselves. On a marketing strategy, everybody uses the same tools. Everyone's a weak spineless cow controlled by the voices in their mind. I can guarantee you that. That's why everyone is the way they are today. That's why we're having the greatest communication breakdown in global history and everyone's conquering and dividing. You give your kids an iPhone or a smartphone at 4 years old, so they're polarized, like a cotton wool baby. Sexy, frustrated, 8 years old, think it's your best friend by the time they're 12. Take a good look at the whole world today. Everyone's sitting in front of a screen more than they spend time with their loved ones and friends. They make excuses with them and lie to them all the time because they're too busy on the screens. Too busy programming and engineering themselves and making a name for themselves. Everybody's a hero in the world. Everyone's going to save the world. And they're all full of BS. Every single freedom fighter in the world is full of BS. Every person that claims to be chosen all over the world is full of BS right now. You don't even believe in that? Oh, man, you've got no idea. You have absolutely no idea in the world. I'm telling you, everybody out there is over-exaggerating every single story they talk about, right, to get attention. Everybody twists the truth so much it's not funny. Every person in the world's doing it, right? No one cares about being reborn. No one cares about the birth. No one cares about crossing over. They all think they know better in the mindset they live in, trapped inside their mind. And you know what? You can say it how it is. The reality is they're possessed by the fucking devil. The reality is they're possessed by the voice in their mind declared on documents all over the world. They're facts. And if you don't care about that, you'll never care about nothing but yourself. But you don't know what the meaning of life is, and you never will until you go through this. And I'm saying it to help you, not to be unkind, to get through your thick skull, because it's pretty difficult. I can guarantee you that. It's more difficult than you understand to get through people's thick skull. People are so weak today. Oh, he's a fearmonger. Oh, he's a narcissist. Because you're controlled by it, you say that. Because you accuse people of what you're getting controlled by. When you're so weak and so conditioned into this weakness, like spineless weak cows and your spine don't work, Jacob's ladder don't work. That's why you become godless and immoral. And twist the paper truth non-stop and normalise it. Normalise what was immoral yesterday. I mean, do you understand what you've normalised over the last 300 years? That's not normal. You don't even understand. You just want to go back to the only normal that you know that caused the problem to begin with. People's become more confused and frustrated throughout human history, and today it's declared they're more frustrated than ever in human history. Trapped inside their mind. In that mindset, where IQ only makes you good at what you do, but not intelligent. When you cannot think outside the mind, and you think with the mind, and then you suffer all the time from addictions and habits, and take drugs to numb yourself, and you lie about it at the same time. My God, can't you see that? With some basic common sense, you can't even communicate with your family, lovers, and friends in real life. You can't divide with them with opinions and judgmental behaviour. You'd rather sit in front of the screen all day, like a moron. Let's be honest about this. You're judging everyone else being on the screen, but you're doing the same thing yourself. I find that astonishing. I've never had a screen in my life until 3.5 years ago. Never. I left my mark on earth. I first had a smartphone just over 3.5 years ago, when God told me to come here to help people break free from amnesia and the reincarnation trap, right? To be reborn, to cross over, right? To understand the meaning of life is to understand the resurrection. To resurrect yourself. To stick your head through the light at the end of the tunnel, and then you look back in the tunnel, and then you know. But not until then do you know anything. You only think you do. And you will always think you do, and you will come to your own conclusion. And I'm not telling you that what you believe in is wrong. I'm telling you, you don't know. You don't know anything. So when you look at people that believe in flat earth, you can see what they believe in, man. They argue, debate, and divide, and get into the biggest arguments in the world because they're right. They know the truth. So mental. So psychological. So when you look at people arguing about the flat earth, you can see their behavior and what they depend on and the tools they use to argue, debate and divide and cause people to stumble and belittle one another and argue and debate and discredit, and so horrible. So horrible people, man. And they say they believe in the Bible when Einstein was an atheist his whole life and believed the flat earth was flat, so they believe in the atheist. They believe in the atheist conclusion as well, right? In those tools. But when Einstein said, in the end, there's overwhelming evidence to suggest otherwise, with a different dimensional view, and then believed in God, oh, they don't believe in that part about him. Isn't that astonishing how mental these people are that refers to one paragraph in the Bible and don't understand metaphor at all? And they're not gnostic masterminds who master the mind. They're mastered by the mind with their conclusion that's literal. And they don't understand that literal is the biggest damage in the world. That keeps you so oppressed by being literal and psychologically mental with a high IQ and think you know everything about life with those tools, with voices in your mind, that's when you become negative and a negative human being and always suppressed into that negative behavior, and you will never learn a goddamn thing with those tools. So I had everything. I had everything. Then I go to prison for 10 years. I hit the brick wall. I fall out of the 7th floor. I lose everything I got. I lose everything. My whole life, every loved one, I get locked up in a cage. I get locked up in prison for 10 years. Okay? I face a lot of bad things in my life and conquered every single thing. Every single thing I've ever done, I conquered. And I did it with the right tools. But now I hit prison and I lose everything that I've got, everything I've worked for, everything in my life. I lose my family, I lose my loved ones, I lose my friends. All the people that I helped and gave all my money away to disappeared on me. The ones I always took care of, right? All my family, lovers and friends that I gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to record it with Evans, all ran away. It's recorded, gave 90% of my money away, $70 million in a court of law. Those people ran away and left me there. And I couldn't understand why. Never committed one violent offence, never committed minor assault charge, recorded no violent offender, no such act. Brought up 2 wives and 6 children perfectly. Absolutely perfectly. Had a good family, commended by the police on their own affidavit. Right? On every record ever shown. Never had a DVO, never had anything like that, never had domestic violence, never had nothing like that in my life. Okay? When I got unlawfully deported, I was deported and set up for deportation twice. More than 200 support letters that shows my true character test. And those letters, right, as the head of border security said from the testing unit, the character test unit, she said she'd never seen a reference like this. She said, but she's an expert and she could see that my own character shined and always showed that it was constantly on the same path. It's constantly in the same path and always had a good character. And that's by 200 people that's actually putting pen to paper. Do you know everyone I gave money to wouldn't put pen to paper? The ones I gave hundreds of thousands of dollars and looked after my whole life, not one of them would put pen to paper. They were too lazy, too psychological, and came up with excuses. Non-stop excuses like the rest of the world does. Pathetic, disgusting human beings that aren't even human anymore. That's what you learn. The people that wrote the letters were the people I looked after in the streets, the people I looked after in prison, the people that looked up to me. They weren't my family, lovers and friends, the ones I gave all the money to, right? If they wrote a letter, it was a 2-line ad. They wrote nothing on there about my character at all. Yet I looked after them the most with millions of dollars, thousands of dollars. And I find that so astonishing that I pulled them out of so many things, and they were too gutless, too weak, and too horrible to write a support letter. That's what you learn. So you go to prison, right? And I was pacing the yard. You know, we were giving rubber thongs, right? They call them flip-flops in other countries, and thongs in Australia. Rubber thongs that last for about 2 years. I used to burn through a set of thongs in 2.5 months, 10 weeks. I was pacing the yard 8 to 10 hours a day. I stressed more than I've had before in my life. I lost every single thing I had. I lost my wife and my children, and I was facing 10 years in prison. Nothing put me through more hell. Dwelling every day on all the things I'm losing, right? And within no time, the materialistic things and the money didn't matter. I was dwelling on my family, lovers and friends. I was dwelling on my kids, all my loved ones. Every day I was doing my head in, I was doing the worst 2 miles you could imagine, 10 hours a day. 10 hours a day for 2 years I was pacing that yard, right? Blaming myself, dwelling every day, all day, what I'd done to myself and the effect I have upon my family, lovers and friends, a domino effect. I was digging into my own morals deeper than I ever had, reflecting my own personality, reflecting on every single thing that happened and what the effects were. In prison, you're in a concrete jungle without a system, right? Completely out of the environment you've been in, right? Completely out of the environment you've been in. You're in a family environment. You're in a unit, a concrete jungle with 50 men in one unit. And you have to get along. You start to learn more about people in there in 5 weeks than you learn about your best friends outside in 5 years, because you're living with them. The elders take you under the wing and shows you the ropes. Make sure you respect one another. Make sure you don't stare at someone, because this is not like outside. You can't be judgmental and selfish and egotistical and competitive, right? You have to use your moral values in the right place. You have to use this as a family unit, like it's your family, right? It's the only way we can get along, because there's no system in here. So that's a shock to the system, because you're programmed to be mentally institutionalized and be egotistical no matter what. So now you hit this brick wall in a family environment, like 0 to 7. Just like when you're a child, 0 to 7, right? Inside your home with your mum and dad and your sisters and brothers. No differently, right? So you're living in a concrete jungle without a system, without a governments and authorities. And only the elders lead you. And then you have to readapt yourself back into your natural environment, the same as 0 to 7. And you know what? It takes 7 years to do that. And after 7 years, you actually find freedom in prison you can't find outside. Because when you get mentally institutionalized in education, you go into mentally institutionalized where you're trapped inside your mind and become your own prison, your own warden, and you become your own worst enemy because you're in the wrong mind. And then you come to jail, you get readapted back into your natural environment, the same as 0 to 7, and only after 7 years to explore the wonderful gift that you have, because you find freedom in prison from the reincarnation trap and trapped inside your mind, the voices in your mind. And you face the devil burning at your feet. And I have to explain this to you. When everybody goes go and walk about in the mountains, when Jesus went and walk about, okay, what happens? What really happens? Well, here I am doing my head in for 2.5 years, 2.5 years. And I'm just starting to cope and stand on my feet, right? When I was giving up on everything, you're giving up. You're going to your deepest emotional feelings, right? And you're stressed more than you ever have been before in your life. Doing your head in and doing head miles every day. That's why in jail they come up and say, mate, stop doing your head in. Stop doing head miles, right? It's going to fucking hurt you, mate. Basic common sense. I thought they were having a go at me, but they were right. I was doing my head in. I was doing head miles. And every day the elders would say, mate, stop doing your head in. Get out of that mindset. Get out of your mind, man. And I used to think to them, how cruel is that to say that? But they were direct. They were straight to the point, and they were right. But it takes you a while to learn that. Okay, the figure of speech in there is completely different than outside, right? And you think that everyone's having a go at you, but they're not. They're actually helping you with basic common sense that we don't use outside. Mate, you're doing your head in. Stop doing your head in. Stop staring, mate. Stop staring, I can feel it. You think, well, how can you feel it? Well, when you get fully readapted, you can feel it through the atmosphere. Sometimes you can open up the door and you can be the first one out of the cage. And the tension's so thick in the air, you can cut it with a knife. And everyone comes out quietly, and everyone goes in the yard really quiet. So it affects everyone. Most mornings, people just bounce out of the doors. Hey, how you going, mate? Good morning, mate. Let's go and have a smoke. Let's go and have a coffee. You see the difference. With your own 2 eyes, you experience the difference that the atmosphere can change so much. Right, from one person. One person have the divine power of changing the whole atmosphere and the whole unit. One person can bring it alive. One person can bring it to the worst moment. One person's feelings can reflect through the atmosphere, through the whole unit. And everyone just sits there quiet and thinks, okay, shit's about to hit the fan somewhere. I can feel it, man. Something's about to go down. And it does. It always does. You learn things you never learn outside that you never were connected to. But I always did follow my instincts. Right? But not like this. Not like this. I realized I was losing to myself. And then you're getting fully adapted, right? And what do? You sit down and drink the coffee all day. You don't sit on modern technology and gadgets. You don't use any of the shit outside, right? You're living in a concrete jungle in a family environment, right? And you sit down and talk to each other all day. You learn to love your enemy as much as your neighbor, because you have to. And you go deep on the same subjects, dwelling on your history, dwelling on why you're here and who you're losing in your life. And everyone's losing everything. But those that stay in here for 7 years or more find the truth that sets you free from everything. And that's why they found the cure of the human condition of humanity in prison of people who've done 7 years or more and learn how to manage their system. People who've done 7 years jail or more, 97% never come back. Everyone who's done less than 7 years, 86% keeps coming back. So they don't learn anything, nor does anyone else in the world. No one ever does, because they always think they're in their right mind. But people who've done 7 years jail and more find freedom in prison, freedom from the mindset they live in, that's programmed and engineered into a prison system where they become their own warden and they become their own worst enemy in the wrong mindset, and they're always being in the wrong mind. They found under cognitive programs after 7 years that we think outside the mind with our natural organic motor skills to think instinctively, and then we find the cure for everything in our mind. And we don't come back to prison. We used to think that people went to jail became institutionalized and couldn't readapt back outside. Now we discovered the truth. You're mentally institutionalized when you go to school, in education, and you suffer with voices in your mind. And when you come to prison, you find truth. You find the truth, and the truth sets you free, and you find freedom in prison after 7 years from the cave of prison. Then you come out of the cave of prison with the truth to the masses in your natural organic motor skills, because you got faith in your biological genes to use your natural organic motor skills the same as 0 to 7, because you get fully readapted back into your natural environment the same as 0 to 7. And then you begin to explore that wonderful gift. But I want to go one step further with you guys. I want to explain something very specifically. I was the first person, right, who brought this to humanity for the first time in human history. And that makes me the greatest philosopher of all time. You know why? I know what the meaning of life is. And that's what this is all about, the meaning of life. So I'm going to explain something to you about what Jesus went through and what these people went through and what this is really all about. After I suffered and I lost everything and fell out of the 70th floor, I hit the bottom of the barrel, right? I suffered with stress and did my head in for more than 2 years. Pacing the yard all by myself. In the yard, pacing the yard 8, 9, 10 hours a day, getting locked up 13 hours a day, every day by myself. Being alone makes you think instinctively and not mentally, right? You're going through all the things going through your mind, every mistake you made, and dwelling everything, and you're doing your head in with head miles. And I did that for more than 2 years, practically 24 hours a day, right? I faced something I'd never faced before that most human beings in the whole world will never deal with. And I don't wish this upon my own worst enemy, I can guarantee you that. But then something extraordinary happened. Into the 3rd year, okay, I won't go into the events, I was put inside what they call the DU. And I spent 9 months in the DU, alone. Just when I thought I was coping, I went into a dark hole. No power, no TV, no nothing. A little box by myself, okay, under major investigation set up for money laundering. I can go into a lot of details, but I'm not here to talk about these details right now. It's written in my book, made many videos about this, but focus on this particular subject. That's the most important subject in the world, especially in the time you're in. So I've gone through this horror for 2.5 years, and next thing, just when I think I can start coping, I end up in here. And I don't even know why. I've got no idea why I'm in here. No news, no information, don't even know why. I was already at the bottom level. I was already losing my family. People were starting to desert me after 2 years, and everyone was deserting me, okay? More alone, more lost than ever. I lost everything in my life. And I'm going to reflect upon this in such a way that you understand why we're told to go walk about by ourselves without any modern gadgets for 40 days and 40 nights, like the Australian Aborigines often do. They go walk about for 4, 5, 6 days all the time, but they often go walk about for a couple of months. There's a key to this, and there's a secret to this. And what do you know what it is? What do you know what the tools are? So I go in this hole, and all I've got is a bed, right? A little toilet, and a tap of water, a water tap, right? A sink. That's it. That's all I've got. I've lost everything. Now I'm sitting in this dark hole, right? I'm sitting in the bottom of the barrel. And when I got in there and I'm sitting there by myself, it was the biggest loss of every single thing and every bit of suffering I've ever went through. This was the very worst moment in my whole entire life where I was dwelling the worst I ever had. The bottom of the barrel, when I couldn't think, when I didn't know it could get any deeper, when I didn't think it could get any lower than here, it got lower. It went to the bottom, right? Where you sat there and you felt like you were rotting up on the inside. You felt like the rot was rotting you up on the inside, and there was nothing left. Nothing. Not a book, not a TV, not a goddamn thing. Nothing left. You're sitting there staring into the floor, staring into the wall, into nothing. And you got nothing. You got nobody. You got not one thing to focus on. You're just doing your fucking head in. And you're reaching the deepest moment of your life in the bottom of that barrel. And you know what? You can feel the devil burning at your feet. You feel the devil burning right at your feet, ready to take your soul. You can feel it. You can feel something you've never felt before in your life. You're facing the devil for the first time in history. You're really facing the devil head on for the first time in your life. You're realizing it's over. You've got nothing left to lose. It's over. It's finished. Your life is finished. There's no more outcries, no more outreach. It's all gone. This is the bottom of the barrel. And the devil's burning right at your feet, and you know it. You can feel it. You can feel your heartbeat away from death. You're a heartbeat away from death. You can feel it. And you get to the point where you just give up. Right? You're not giving up, but there's nothing you can do. You're completely hopeless, with absolutely no lifelines left. You're at the bottom of the barrel. Right? In the darkest moment of your life. And you're facing the devil head on, man. You're facing your worst fucking nightmare. You're facing the boogeyman, the one that introduced you at 2 years old on a nightly basis, scared the living shit out. You remember that? Mummy, the boogeyman's coming to get you. But your imagination runs wild. But you're facing the boogeyman. You're facing him head on. You're right there facing him in that moment. Without even realizing it. You don't give up, but you don't have a choice. You're stuck in the worst moment of your life. There's not a thing you can do. You're totally hopeless. You don't give up on your moral values. You don't give up on your faith. You don't give up on your love. You don't give up on your care, because that's all you think about. That's all you dwell on. Every moment you created. Every moment that you treasure the most with your loved ones. You don't give up on none of that. But you know you're at the bottom of the barrel and you feel so sorry. Right? But you eventually let go and you're not in fear. You're going through this for weeks, right? You're going through this every day with nothing, right? And after about 3.5 weeks, okay, 3.5 weeks, you go through the most extraordinary event in your life where you've given in and ready to die. You're just handing yourself over to death, not to the devil. Because you know something? I never believed in God, never read the Bible, never went to church, right? Didn't even know I was spiritual, none of those things, right? I'm sitting in my toughest moment, but I know something. I was always open-minded about anything. But that moment is when I faced death head on. That's when I gave in to death and quite happy to accept the fact that I was going to die in that moment, that I was going to just right up and die, right? Didn't give up on my principalities and my power, nothing like that, right? But I gave up on the fact that I couldn't beat death. Death's going to get me. And then when I just gave up, I gave up death, right? I'm facing the devil head on, but I wasn't giving up to him without even realizing it. But I could feel that motherfucker burning at my feet, wanting to take my soul, right? And there's no way explaining this, but I could feel him ready to take my soul. I could feel it, that I was in that moment and he was ready to take me. I didn't give up on anything like that. I never gave up in life, right? But I gave up on the fact that I was absolutely defeated. Had nowhere to go with the tools I had. And just accepted the fact that this was the last moment in my life and this was finished. And in that moment, right, I wake up the next day, not worried about anything. Not worried about nothing anymore. No more doing my head in, no more voice in mind. Completely gone. Just sitting there thinking, you know what? I don't care. This is how it is. There's nothing I can do about it. Right? But it's not giving up. Right? It's not giving up. It's just giving up on the fact that you are defenseless and you can't beat the situation and you're quite happy, right, to let things go and not let it control you. Then you're sitting there with nothing to do, wondering like you always do, and all of a sudden you start thinking differently without even realizing it. Now I was out of shape, right, completely out of shape. And I thought to myself, you know, why not do a push-up? Do a couple of push-ups, right? Do a couple of push-ups. So I started doing a couple of push-ups. Every 5 minutes I do a couple of push-ups that day. The next day I woke up and I did 10 push-ups every 5 minutes, all day. The next day I was doing 20s, all day, right? And I started to feel better and feel better because my mind was in the right place. Healthy mind, healthy body. Not healthy body, healthy mind. Healthy mind, healthy body. Once my mind was in the right place, I started to look after myself without even realizing it. I started to change my whole perception. I started to think outside the mind, not in the mind anymore. I didn't even realize what was going on, but I was thinking completely outside the mind now. I wasn't thinking with the mind anymore. I escaped the trap stuck in my mind. I escaped my mind trap. So from this moment onwards, okay, extraordinarily after 6-7 weeks, I got put into another cell with a television. And when I went in there with the television and power again, I'd put on the morning news. I'd start training at 6 o'clock in the morning and I'd pump all day for 6, 7, 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours a day, every day. Sorry, 8 to 10 hours a day, every single day. I had nothing else to do, right? And after about 5 months, you know what I felt? I felt like this was the best jail I ever did. Now, can you even understand that concept? Now I felt like I was in the best jail I ever did. I was in the best moment, being left alone by everyone, and also in dream time all the time, and also thinking instinctively non-stop, and not thinking with the mind, not trapping the mind anymore. Anyway, then I come out of prison, right out of the DU, went through some extraordinary events that I've gone into a lot of details about, but the fact is this, in 2008, the biggest mental health research ever conducted, they went to research, right, in prison to find the cure of the human condition for the first time in human history. And in 2008, I brought the freedom to humanity. From the cave of prison, from the worst hole, from facing the meaning of life, from learning what the meaning of life is. And it's to think outside the mind and face your worst consequences when you face the devil burning at your feet. When you cross that moment, you cross the light at the end of the tunnel and stick your head outside the light. Outside the tunnel, right? You stick your head outside the cave and your whole perception changes, your whole meaning of life. And what happens then is you cure yourself from every voice in your mind. So in 2008, I bring the cure of the human condition to humanity from the cave of prison with the truth to the masses. And now you understand what the meaning of life is, right? When you cross over and meet the devil head on like this and you beat the death experience and know that you never die. Not in the believing, in the knowing. And most people in the world can't explain the meaning of life because they can't understand how to get there neither. They've got no concept. It took Moses 40 years and 3 generations to bring the Israelis through this meaning. Jesus knew the best. He brought 12 disciples through the meaning of life and broke them free from amnesia over 7 years to teach them how to use those tools. Now, I've gone into a lot of information that the teacher who taught Jesus for 17 years was the greatest mastermind of all that knew what the meaning of life was and taught Jesus how to learn the meaning of life so he could break free from amnesia. He was the greatest mastermind of all that taught him to do that. And that was Enoch wrapped it into the future in the spirit that taught him how to do that. And he was righteous and the teacher and the most favorite man of God that wrapped himself into the future to bring himself up to be perfect by 24 and to be the greater mastermind that would learn that faster than what Enoch did. And Enoch was a great mastermind who brought him through that. He brought him through with that kind of mastermind that he could teach himself with his 12 pupils in 7 years. The fastest teaching in the world. But Jesus learnt in 40 days and 40 nights how to break free from amnesia. 40 days and 40 nights. And the only people in the whole world that knows that is the last civilization in the world, the Australian Aborigines, that knows that, the meaning of life, in 40 days and 40 nights. And I learned in the cave of prison myself, in the darkest cave, where it says in the Bible, in the oldest Bibles, that I will come with the resurrection of humanity, with the right tools, and I'll come from the cave of the prison with the truth to the masses. Okay? So believe me, I am your greatest teacher in the world that can explain this better than any other moving on earth. And you have to go through the events that I went through and get off the grid for 7 years to master your mind. Or go through an extraordinary event like I have to learn this. God created me in this world. He brought me through a certain path to become a mastermind and to become a king of all kings in the underground world and to put my mark on earth with that kind of evidence to show you what the meaning of life is. The meaning of life is having faith in your biological genes to think outside the mind with your natural organic motor skills. The meaning of life is 8 specific tools that are righteous. The building blocks: loyalty, honor, respect, moral restoration, and encouragement. Coded in your DNA. The 8 tools of righteousness are the most important tools that makes you a loving, compassionate creature to understand that life, the meaning of life is about love. It's about believing and about love, and everything else in the world is full of BS. But you must know the tools to be in balance with yourself and understand that you must be in balance and be humble, right? And use the right tools is the only key to understand what the meaning of life is and to think outside the mind, not with the mind. To be free from the trap, trapped in your mind, being free from the reincarnation trap, being trapped inside your mind. Breaking free from amnesia is discovering who you really are, why you're here, and what the meaning of life is. And then you understand resurrection and look back in the tunnel and realize why no one knows any better and why they do not know what they do, because you didn't until that moment. This is something no scholar in the whole world or any religious leader or any person who thinks anything about the Bible is teaching at all, because they don't know. They've never been reborn. They've never been chosen. They can't explain any of these things. That's how you know. That's the greatest lesson you will ever learn in life. And I hope you learn from it. Because if you don't, you never will.